Captain Planet is not a normal superhero. And not just because he's blue with the green mullet. I think Captain Planet is not a normal superhero because he was written by a woman. When Ted Turner had this amazing idea that the world needed a superhero for the planet, he entrusted that vision to his executive producer, Barbara Pyle. And the mythology that she wrote went like this. There are 5 young people from 5 continents who are strengthened by the elements of the earth. And when they see something in the environment or in the social fabric that needs fixing, they combine their powers and they fix it. And the power of that collaboration creates a superhero, and that superhero is Captain Planet. For the last 30 years, it has been the work of this foundation to try to bring that mythology to life. And for the first 25 of those years, we did that primarily through K-12 educators. But then in 2016, Gen Z knocked on our door. And they demanded that we work with them directly. Now, we had seen a lot of young activists before, but what we had noticed was that the time between them activating and being successful at the work was long. It was like 5 and 6 years long. And so we wondered what would happen if we built a program to train them to be more successful, and if we used peers who were change makers, like Shutez Cott Martinez, like Hannah Testa, like Carter Reese, like Olivia Reese. And what if we used near peers who were also change makers, like John R. Seidel and Aaron Schrody? Could we shorten that time? Dyson Chi was 16 years old when he came to a training in 2018. He had grown up on the island of Oahu, and he had noticed in his very short lifetime the amount of ocean plastics that had changed in the water. He came to a training, and within a year of attending, he had run a youth campaign that helped pass Bill 40, which was the most restrictive single-use plastic bill ever passed in the United States. Six months later, he helped close the last coal-fired power plant in Hawaii. Yep. And this year, he's been working to close and clean up the Red Hill fuel tank disaster, which right now is poisoning the water of over 100,000 Hawaiians on the west coast of Oahu, mostly indigenous Hawaiians. Dejae Lyons came to a training in 2019, and then she went back to Cayman Island, and she co-founded an organization called Protect Our Future. And the first thing that they did together was they recruited about 70 young people from 5 different high schools. And then they helped pass a single-use plastic ban across Cayman Islands. But then they heard that the government was getting ready to open a new cruise port that was going to decimate the barrier island off of Grand Cayman. And they began to do their research about the science, and they realized that what the government was telling them about that reef was not true. And so they ran a counter-education campaign. They got a judge to force a referendum on this deal that they had made, and ultimately the residents of Cayman Islands voted that down, and it went away. Dejae just started school on a scholarship college at Bath University in the UK, and she just joined the dance team. So, Michelle and Jeremy from Kisumu, Kenya. 2020, they came to a virtual training with us. And Michelle, like Dyson, had noticed, she lived on a big water body called Lake Victoria, and she had noticed that the biodiversity and the health of that water body was also changing very rapidly in her lifetime. And so she and her 14-year-old brother started a group called Bring Back Lake Victoria. And they realized very quickly that they were at the northern tip of the largest freshwater lake in the world, and that them doing their work was not going to hack it, right? They needed more help. So they ran a conference last July And they trained over 150 other young people from 5 countries to stand up their own campaigns. And the governor of Kisumu was their keynote speaker. And they're going to do it again this July, and we're going to help them, and we're going to talk about that a little later tonight. All right, so I know what you're thinking. You're like, okay, well, those kids are special. And they are. They are special, but they're not unique. There's Robbie Bond in Utah. There's Oluwaseyi in Nigeria. Anna and Lakshika in India. Caitlin and Chelsea in Jamaica. Stephanie and Nat in Australia. Manar in Tunisia. Finlay in Scotland. Apurva in Massachusetts. Sana in Gambia. Cash in Tennessee. Ella Grace in Vancouver, Canada. Ashton and Zara in England. Diego in Mexico City. And John in Peru. I mean, I could go on and on and on. Over the past several years, we've trained over 2,500 young people from 90 nations. And one of our Planetary Alliance ambassadors is a young woman named Shantae Davis. And she and her family were displaced from New Orleans during Hurricane Katrina. And then they experienced the devastation of Hurricane Harvey just 4 years later, where they had moved to in Houston. And she activated into climate work. But she's also an incredibly talented spoken word artist. And she coined one of our favorite phrases that she uses when she approaches her climate work, and that is militant optimism. And we were like, well, what's that mean to you? And she said, that means that I believe in progress and change at the scale of the problem that is happening. And Planetary Alliance is a great example of militant optimism. This is our bid to give Gen Z and Gen Alpha all the tools and resources that they need in order to implement solutions at the scale of this problem. Y'all, the IPCC just gave a report 2 weeks ago, and it said the next 10 years are going to determine what kind of a world we leave for our children and our grandchildren. My wife and I are also celebrating 30 years. Ours came with a 14-year break, but that's another story. But since we met, she's been trying to get me to love David Byrne and the Talking Heads, and I just didn't. And then we went and saw him in American Utopia. And now I'm obsessed with his music. And she asked me the other day, she's like, what changed? And I said, I don't know, I guess I just didn't understand until I understood. And so what I'm asking you tonight is to understand what I'm saying enough to really make it understood. That the more quickly we train these young people, the more we invest in their campaigns and their projects, the more that we build groups of mentors to help them implement the changes that are necessary at scale, the more quickly we will leave a world that is livable for our children, our grandchildren, and the generations that follow. Captain Planet, we're here for that challenge, and I'm super glad you joined us. Thank you.